Episode number 2 of Aquarium Apologetics with Chloe, where Chloe asks me the tough questions about the Bible or anything.
Let's keep going.
Okay, so Chloe, you have a question for me.
Why does God allow war?
Why does God allow war? That's a great question, Chloe.
You say that every time.
Well, it's they're always great questions. Well, here's why God allows war. I'm going to turn to the Bible in Romans chapter 13. I had to think about that for a second.
Because it's a tough question.
It kind of was at first.
Sweet. We
So
got a mama.
Romans 13, it says, let every soul, so starting in verse 1, it says, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists the ordinances of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid. For he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore you must be subject not only because of wrath, but for conscience sake. For because of this you also pay taxes, for they are God's ministers, attending continually to this very thing. Render therefore all due taxes, etc., etc. So it starts to get into taxes and stuff like that. So God allows war because God sets up governments that are our authorities as people, and He uses the governments to, it says, stop kicking the table. He uses the government to, let me just go back to the verse here once. It says that rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of authority? Do what is good, and you'll have praise from the same. He's God's minister for good, but if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. So the sword of the government would be its military, right? That would go to war. So God allows war. Um, Usually, wars happen when somebody bad does something to try to take over something. And um, let's say, for example, World War II.
Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler wanted to exterminate the Jewish people and take over all of Europe and pretty much the entire world. Um, so God used the sword of the government of the United States and other countries, to bring um, to bring Hitler down. So that's why God allows war. So we could say maybe it's God's judgment on this or that. We don't know that for sure. We don't know what the mind of God is exactly on those things, but we do know that God does allow for war to happen, um, to bring judgment or bring execution or um, to bring justice to those that would do evil.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mama!
With that, that is the end of episode 2 of Aquarium Apologetics. Good night.